Fascinating. This is Gabrielle Ruiz, and you are watching TrekCulture.
Did you run a level 2 diagnostic?
See, I was going to, but I was actually going to get the acting ensign to do it, but then I couldn't get through to him.
Okay, if that happens in the future, what you want to do is reverse the polarity of your buzzard collectors and ensure that your inertial dampeners are rerouting power through the starboard nacelles. That generally clears up that kind of L-CARS buffering problem. It's not in any of the manuals. You cannot be expected to know that. It just comes from experience. Your chief engineer really should have taught you that, and I'm sorry that they didn't.
We're having a season 1 issue at the moment where I don't even know who the chief engineer is this week.
Oh, man, I remember that. You never knew who you could talk to. Right. I'll tell you, don't talk to Biff Yeager. He's not going to be around very long.
I'm sorry. I feel so bad for the poor guy, but yeah.
But I'm glad that you get that, because that is one of the deepest cut Star Trek references that a lot of people don't get. And my heart just exploded with joy that you received it. Yeah.
I just think it's the great letter writing campaign that we never talk about.
Yeah.
In fairness, you can't say he didn't try.
That is absolutely true.
I was going to say, well, I mean, obviously, thank you. You're awesome. You're wonderful. How are you? How are you? After everything, like the last couple of weeks must have been insane.
It's been really wonderful. I've kept this secret for nearly 4 years, and my excitement has only grown since they finally announced a release date, and I just kept getting more and more excited and more and more excited, and then it was released, and I knew I couldn't talk about it right away because you don't even see it until episode 9, and I didn't want to spoil it for anybody because it's such a wonderful surprise and it's such a great reveal. The reveal is so emotionally resonant. I didn't want to steal that from anybody. There was a moment where, based on my life experience, I just thought, well, I hope they don't hate it. Well, I hope that it works the way that I felt like it worked when we recorded it, because we all felt really good about it and we all really liked it, but you never know how an audience is going to respond to something. The response has completely taken me by surprise. I was hopeful that people would think, hey, that's neat. I was completely unprepared for what is turning out to be this massive celebration of Wesley Crusher. This enthusiastic outpouring of love and validation and excitement and that just after all these years, they finally got Wesley right. After all these years, they finally let him realize his potential. I just hoped people would like it. I did not expect, and I didn't dare dream that they would love it. And it's just been incredible. I'm so grateful. I'm grateful to Kevin and Dan. I'm grateful to Jen Murrow. I'm grateful to Alex and Akiva and to everybody who helped bring this all together. Everything had to go right for this to work. And it did.
That's actually, it's because you're so right, and I think it has gone so well. The reaction effectively speaks for itself, right?
Well,
you're sitting there on this knowledge for the last 4 years, and then you start to see things about oh, we're going to do a staggered release, and then it's coming off CBS. For you, who has even more skin in the game than everyone else, and you're doing ready rooms and you're doing interviews by this as well. How does that feel for you?
It's I have to honor my NDA, and I have to find ways to answer very direct questions about this that remain honest. So if you look back over the last few years, the question was asked more than once, would this happen? Would you do it? What do you think about these things? And all I could ever say was, I would love that. I think it would be amazing. I have ideas. Those are all true statements. What I left out was, and I did it, and it was great. It's been like I'm looking at this gift that I just don't know if I'm going to get to unwrap. There was a moment where we had no idea if this second season was even going to find a home, and it made no sense to me that it wouldn't, but I've been in this industry long enough to know that things that don't make sense happen all the time, and they happen for the dumbest possible reasons. So I was just so grateful when I found out that it was going to have a release, that it was going to be on Netflix, that it was going to be worldwide. And then it was just like, try to keep that excitement in check, try to keep my expectations realistic, and just wait until the day arrived. When I watched it, it had been so long since we recorded it, I had forgotten everything except the very broad strokes. I had forgotten so much of the story. I had forgotten all of the other characters' dialogue. I had forgotten a lot about, like, how he was interacting with them. I remembered the choices that we made, but I didn't remember. I couldn't still feel them in my body like I can right after I've done a performance. So I watched this, and for the first time in my entire career as an actor, I didn't have to look at me. I didn't have to look at the parts of myself that I don't like. I didn't have to look at things that I'm self-conscious about. I didn't get distracted by looking for flaws in my performance so that I could get out ahead of people who were going to criticize me. I just enjoyed it. I just loved the story. I just loved Wesley Crusher. I loved what he was doing. I was excited. I was entertained. I was proud of myself. It was just like, I was just so happy. And I texted my friend Jet and I told her, like, I've never been able to watch Wesley Crusher the way the audience has until now. And I don't have the words. I'm sorry. I just don't. All I can say is it is just joy. It's joy and it's relief and it's validation. I feel seen in a way that I always wanted to feel seen and I never did. And I feel like Wesley Crusher has come home after being gone for a really long time. The cameo in Picard was wonderful. It was beautiful. It was great. That was such a beautiful, wonderful moment. It was a greeting card, unexpected, lovely to receive in the mail. Wesley and Prodigy is like a bunch of presents sitting on a table saying, hey, these are all for you, buddy. Open them when you're ready. And it has just been so much more than I ever could have asked for.
What I've loved as a fan, and over the last few years, which I feel kind of culminates in Prodigy, is what I'm going to call the Renaissance. That, you know, the old nonsense about not liking Wesley, I think that's really come to an end for quite a while now.
Yeah, and it's empirically untrue. If you talk to people who are like adults now, they were kids who were crazy about him. There's an entire generation of children who were drawn to Next Generation because of Wesley, the whole reason he exists. They watched it with their parents. They loved it. They didn't write letters to Starlog. They didn't post on the internet. They weren't complaining about it. They were just loving it. We just didn't know that they existed. And when I talk to them now, and I've talked to them over the last 30 years, they just like, yeah, I loved it. I watched it with my parents, and I love Star Trek because I loved Wesley. And those kids grew up, and those kids are adults who work for NASA and work for JPL and work for the ESA and do science and write for Star Trek.
It is, you can tell in the writing, particularly I think of Prodigy, of course, you can tell that this is made by people who care about the character. Because I was wondering, when episode 9 aired, I thought, oh, this might be a cool cameo. And of course, it's not a cameo at all.
I know. Yeah, when they said it's going to be an arc, Kevin was like, no, this is a whole arc. He's a really important part of the story. I was intimidated by that. Just, this was so long ago, right? Like, just a lot of really wonderful stuff has happened for me. A lot of wonderful stuff has happened for me as it relates to my role in the Star Trek universe and my place in the Star Trek universe since then, right? Picard was so beautifully received and lovingly received from everyone. The Ready Room has a gigantic audience that really loves what we do there. And I just feel really secure and really confident and really comfortable and really at home. But I wasn't there when this came to me, and I was like, "That's a huge responsibility." Okay, here we go. And I'm really grateful and really glad that it worked.
I mean, again, as I say, the reaction pretty much proves that it did work. When they came to you and when they said, right, we want to do this, we want to do an arc, we want to bring you back, for you as a performer, was it right? Okay, back streaming, encounter at Farpoint, and let's try and get back to Wesley, or did you say no? I have grown. I'm going to move this in a different direction. What was your approach?
So early on, I had conversations with Jen Moreau, who's staff writer and a good friend of mine, and then with Kevin and Dan, and we talked about what Wesley was going to be, who Wesley was going to be. Well, look, I've been writing fan fiction about Wesley for years because I love him, and I wondered what he was doing, and I wanted to explore what it meant to be a traveler. That was an interesting story for me, and I started writing my own fan fiction about him, and just kind of figured out, the travelers are sort of like Star Trek's Time Lords, and they were very much on board with that. They saw it the same way, and we all wanted to pay homage to Doctor Who. We all wanted to honor the Star Trek that came before us, and we wanted to celebrate other parts of science fiction that also inspire people. Like, the best part of Star Trek is that everyone in it represents the very best of humanity. They represent the very best of themselves, and that's like the Doctor very much represents the best of any creature. Yes, what is your whole point of existing? To help people, to hold things together, to make sure that the right thing happens, to make sure that the universe stays together, and that everyone has an opportunity to live their best lives with minimal interference from me. Oh yeah, that's totally what the travelers do. So by the time we started talking about it, like, I knew all of that about him, and what I thought was, I'm either going to have to like invalidate all my fan fiction, which is fine, or maybe it's going to get pulled into canon, and that's kind of what happened. In the performance, I had done Wesley on Picard, and Picard has a darker tone than Prodigy does. And I came into the booth with that energy, and Kevin was like, he was like, the Picard Wesley is that, and wonderful, and not right for our universe. He needs more energy. Okay, where's that energy going to come from? I just went back to the like kind of iconic scientist, mad scientist characters that I've always loved. The professor from Gilligan's Island, Doc Brown from Back to the Future, Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park, and then the Doctor from Doctor Who. And I tried each of them in different ways. And when I just had a picture in my head of like, what would David Tennant do? It all worked. It all just came together, and we all knew immediately, oh, this is absolutely right. This is the right energy for him. As an actor, the way that I justified all of it is that like Wesley and any traveler kind of exists in all these timelines all at the same time, kind of like all over the place, because you're only limited by imagination, right? That's the whole idea of space, time, and thought coming together. You're really only limited by imagination. So I decided that when Wesley is talking and comes back, when he does this, it's because in some other reality, like, his attention is needed right now. And he, for our purposes, he's away for a few seconds, but I don't know how long he's actually there. I mean, he could be there for years, and then he comes back. So he forgets. And there are moments where and I can't remember if it made it into the final edit or not, but there were a couple of moments where he like inadvertently tells one of the kids something, right? And is like, oh, has that happened to you yet? I'm probably not supposed to tell you that. Okay, so if that happens, you got to act like it didn't have, right? And there were things like that I thought were really fun. And it just it all made sense. It felt grounded in reality. It was a performance that was an absolute delight to embrace. As someone who is a fan, a lifelong fan of Star Trek and Doctor Who, to be a character that's kind of putting them together like that was a dream come true, and it was a gift. And I am thrilled beyond words that the audience has responded to it the way that I did.
Just this final question for you, and in a way it's been answered by everything we've talked about, but Wesley is the character that in Prodigy brings together the Kelvin universe, the Mirror universe, the Prime universe. You have Doctor Who, you have Star Trek. Wesley, I think, is very like Will Wheaton in that this community just happens around Wesley in the same way that you yourself are very much one of the key members of the Trek, and now Doctor Who as well, communities. Do you feel that, and how does it feel?
I don't think that I've earned anything in Doctor Who yet, but I love that. Thank you. We'll see if that happens. I thought about this a lot. I was really sad, profoundly sad when my cast reunited on the bridge and I wasn't there. Only because I would have cherished the experience of kind of coming as close to reliving the best days of our lives together as we're ever going to get. And I really felt that loss, and I was really, really sad about it. And I just thought, I don't know that I'm ever going to get to be part of this. I'm never going to get to do these things. And I'm so bummed about that. But at the same time, I'm the host of the Ready Room. I've done 100 episodes of the Ready Room for every Star Trek show. Had I been like only on Next Generation, I wouldn't know all these people I know. I wouldn't have friends that are friends in my life because I met them on an interview and it turns out that we like a lot of the same things. Wesley and I really have that in common. He has the ability and the privilege of kind of going anywhere and doing anything, which opens up the possibility for him to be part of all of these different timelines, all of these different universes. And it opens up for me, as the host of Ready Room, the opportunity to do that as a human being, as a Star Trek fan. I get to occupy this wonderful, unique space that I think only I get to occupy as a former cast member, a legacy cast member, lifelong fan, bringing those two things together and like talking about what that means. And had I been there on the bridge and that was all of it, that would have been wonderful. That would have been an incredible day. I think this is better. I think that it's kind of like that thing where they say if you wait longer, you can have more marshmallows. I think it's kind of the same thing. My relationship with my cast has not been diminished in any way. My closeness to them hasn't changed at all. The only thing that's different is I have legitimate friends in Lower Decks and in Prodigy and in Strange New Worlds and in Discovery. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And it's a privilege. I know that Star Trek is something bigger than all of us. It doesn't belong to anyone. Star Trek is a gigantic idea, and we all have to take care of it, right? We who have the privilege of being part of it for a brief moment in time, we get to take care of it and nurture it and help it grow and help it find its audience and keep it honest, and then hand it off to the next generation and encourage them to keep it going and doing the same thing. As the youngest elder in the Star Trek universe, I am experiencing that privilege of meeting these people and getting to tell them, if you want it, no expectations. I'm just telling you as an old man in this universe, if you want it, you have a family that's always going to be there for you. You have a place to call home for the rest of your life, if you want it. And even if you don't, please take care of the little part that you're holding right now so that for someone in the future who does want it, it's there. It's ready for them. It's that room in the time ziggurat that they're gonna come in, and when they do, I'll be there with some earth grapes and some mango juice.
Will, thank you so much. You're a gentleman. You do so much, and it's genuinely a pleasure to get to see you getting celebrated the way you should be celebrated, as you have been recently.
That's very kind. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
thank you so much for watching this abbreviated version of this podcast. Now, if you go to our audio platforms, you will get the full version of this podcast with this guest. So we really, really appreciate you subscribing to that, and you're just awesome and wonderful. Thank you so much.